Hello, listeners and gentle readers. Today we are going to be talking about Lore of the Wild, because Steph hates me and
I
recommended it to
don't.
me, and I read it, and now I hate her. And this will probably be the last episode of Margin Mavens because I never want to talk to her again. JK,
Yeah, that's fair. That's
it's
fair.
mostly.
I mean, I think we're pretty even for Fallout of Fallacy.
You ain't gotta bring that up like that, though. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I
you
did.
don't have to do that to me.
So, Lore of the Wilds by Annalise Sabrana follows Lore, which was first off. I mean, we mentioned it in, or I mentioned it in a Patreon episode a couple episodes back from the time that we're filming this. Um, Follows a girl named Lore, who she is part of a little village that is basically being trapped in like some sort of bubble. They're not able to get out. They're not able
They're not
to
allowed to leave.
yeah, they're not allowed to leave. They're kind of just held there by some like Fey royal family.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a weird murky history. No one's really sure why it's happening. The humans apparently came from a different world and they are not being told what like how they got there, why they're there, anything like that. They're kind of just playthings for these Fae. So Lore ends up kind of sacrificing herself
Mm-hmm.
because the one of the Fey Lords comes in and is like, "Hey, yo, I want you
To go into
to
my
to
library.
go into my library. We can't get in. You need to find a book for me." And so she's like, "Okay, as long as you go and help my village, like I'm cool with this and whatever." So we meet a myriad of characters. So there's Asher, who is a deer fae,
I think this is the
and we end up meeting some more friends. So we end up meeting like Finn and his sister. Lore kind of becomes part of a
real found family, if
yeah,
you
a
will.
little found family. She realizes because she finds the book that she is looking for. So for anybody who has not read the book, obviously this is your only warning that our book chats tend to have spoilers in them because obviously we're talking about the book and not just the premise. So she ends up finding the book that she was looking for, and the book ends up talking to her, which I thought was kind of neat. Ends up talking to her and basically shows her, like, hey, the Lord is lying to you. He has not helped your village. They are actually worse for where you left them.
Yeah.
And so she decides right then and there, screw them all, I'm going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And on her way out, she runs into Asher, and he kind of ends up surprising us because he actually ends up helping her
Her to leave.
escape. So the two of them are off. He is bringing her to some friends of his. Excuse me.
Isla and Finn.
Yeah, Isla and Finn. I end up loving both of them immediately. They had
Yes.
my heart.
Yes.
Um, we see a romance brewing between Lore and Asher. We also get Finn, who is very like standoffish, but he does a lot to kind of prove that he cares, but in a way of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm never gonna say I care.
Yeah.
But
Very grumpy
yeah,
sunshine.
very grumpy sunshine. Like there's a point where Isla and Laura are like at the market. They get separated. Laura gets like attacked and Finn just kind of shows up out of nowhere. Um
Murders the attackers, and
Murders the
it's
attackers, does
amazing.
everything. Um and something that I kept seeing because obviously I've seen a lot of discourse about this book because was it the best book in the world? No. It was a fun read. I think a lot of people are a lot harsher on this book than it deserves. I think it's a debut novel, and I think for a debut novel, it has a lot of potential to be a really good series as this author grows.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the things that I kept seeing in discourse was like, oh, um, Finn is kind of shown as this like grumpy sunshine character, but he doesn't his like motives aren't actually explained. He's not very clear in what he does. And I'm like, I think he's very clear on what he does. Like he shows up out of nowhere and Laura makes a point of saying like, I don't know how he knew where I was. And I'm like, dude, he had to have been following both of you, but knew that like his sister could handle herself. So he didn't go after his sister.
Right.
Um and so I think that he does a lot. I think like he ends up like sucking the poison out of her. Just very immediate, like I'm here for you kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
They grow closer when Asher is gone, but then Asher returns and Finn kind of goes cold again because he's like, obviously, we can't continue the way we were if Asher is here.
He also doesn't trust Asher.
Yeah, he makes it very clear from the beginning he does not like Asher. No one really is sure why. Um,
Until the end.
until we're sure why. And so
Still hate you for that.
Laura finds out that her people, her village, right? A majority of them have been
Yes.
taken by the
Women and
Fae,
children.
women
Yep.
and children specifically, because they are doing really disgusting things like wanting to use the humans to make more Fae, but basically just to up their numbers and not because they think the humans are worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lore and Finn and Asher and all of them help the people escape. Lore sends Asher ahead with the people and is like, we will meet you there.
Right.
And then the pivotal scene that had me rereading and rereading and rereading is at the end of the book. Lore and Finn approach, they see Asher, and Asher by this point is like Lore's partner. There's a spice scene that we'll talk about in a moment once certain things are said. But Asher's like, okay, hey, can I speak to Lore for a second? And Lore's like, yeah, sure. What's up? And Finn goes, okay, I must still be here though. And Asher's like, no. It's between us two. Like, you could go. And Finn is like, absolutely not. I'm going to stay here. Something ain't right. And then we find out that Asher is not Asher and has never been Asher and is actually the Fae Lord that we see very little of. Which, to be fair, I did not see the plot twist coming, but I did think it was odd in like a fantasy world to have a Fae Lord that we did not see more of.
Really? Because that didn't phase me. Because like I figured the Lord's doing, the Fey Lord's doing whatever it is that Fey Lords are supposed to be doing. Like,
No, I think
that's why he has a steward.
there was a specific point when Lore is like having lunch or something with the Fae Lord, and he makes sure to bring like a crap ton of food for her. And I'm like, weird. How would he know that she like loves food, you know? And then second, he like made a point of saying like who the boys were and stuff. And Lore in her head is like, oh, for somebody who hasn't been around, like he sure has been keeping tabs on me. And I was like, what a weird thing. And so then obviously when we find out that he was Asher all along,
Yes.
it makes sense because he wasn't keeping tabs. He was just there.
I'm like, oh, cool. Like everybody got out. Cool. Next book's going to be about, fighting for the rights of the humans and ensuring that war is not going to happen or what have you, right? Like, and then I get to that part. I get to the part where Asher reveals himself to be Lord Cyrell or whatever his name is. And it just took everything and flipped it on its head. Because not only does Asher reveal himself to be this Fey Lord, he also now has possession of the book. And he now has Lore and probably Finn as well as prisoners.
Yeah, because he says like, I'm going to keep Finn because there seems to be something brewing here. And I think I can use him to make sure that you stay in line.
Yeah. I'm over here thinking it's going to be a cute little polycule of like just grumpy sunshine.
We're always
grumpy
shooting for the
and two
polycule.
sunshines, and instead my heart was wrenched out of my chest, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, I think it was a hell of a plot twist. I think it was a really cool way of putting a spin on like a story that has been told. We see a lot of like evil Fae Lords and we see
Yeah.
whatever, but this was still like it kept it interesting. I'm like very interested in the next book, which apparently should be coming out sometime next year.
Hmm.
Um and yeah, I think so there are a couple points that I wanted to go over. So first and foremost, the hate on this book.
See, I don't know anything about the discourse around this book.
So yeah, there's a lot of discourse on this book. I've watched numerous I kind of fell down a rabbit hole a little bit because people are allowed to dislike books. They're allowed to dislike books. They're allowed to give their opinions on the books. But there was a creator, I forgot his name, but I'll probably put it somewhere on the screen. There was a creator that I think brought up a really good point that when a person of color writes a book, they're held to such a higher standard.
Absolutely.
Like I can count using all of my digits books that were written by like cis white people
Hmm.
that were not great, but are still
Hmm.
not put to that level of like scrutiny.
Hmm.
But every single time it's a person of color and they are writing a book and it's not a like masterpiece, it
Right.
is put in this light of like, oh, it's not even worth the read. I
Right.
think anybody, but specifically people of color, should be able to write smaller, silly little fantasy books, right?
Right.
That maybe you guess the meaning of. Maybe you spot some grammatical errors, whatever, without it being like a witch hunt.
Right.
I think this author has a lot of potential for growth. I think like a lot of people forget how hard it is to write a book.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was just incredibly proud of her. I think the cover of it is beautiful. That's what
The
got
cover
me.
is gorgeous.
That's what got me when
Yes.
I saw it at Target was like, oh, this is a really cool cover. And then obviously I saw like Enchanted Library, all of these things. I think she brings in a lot of like complex issues because you have the idea of like basically refugees and you have this idea of like a magic system, which I do believe that the magic system needs more refining and more work. I think there needs to be a little bit more of an explanation as to
Explanation as to
like
how it works.
how it
But it makes
works.
sense that that wouldn't be in the first book because Lore isn't aware
Yeah. Yeah.
of
And
what
so
it takes, you know,
I think like as a reader, we forget that we don't always get the opportunity to be like the
omniscient
yeah, like viewer
presence. Yeah.
that is able to like know everything that the characters don't know. We're kind of figuring things out as lore figures it out. And I think that that's really interesting and makes it more believable because there's certain points where like lore makes a choice, right? And I'm like, that might not
Hmm.
have been the choice that I would have made. But then I'm like, I also know more than she does. Like with her
Correct.
knowledge, I probably would have made the exact same choice.
Correct.
Um, a second point that I wanted to talk about is obviously with Asher not being Asher, right? Looking back, the spice scene makes me really uncomfortable.
Right. Because she was consenting to Asher.
Yeah. And
Right.
so there is a little bit of like SA here because now she's like, oh, I was not fully informed as to what was happening in this
Correct.
relationship.
Correct.
And I don't think a lot of people talk about that.
I wonder if that was intentional. Like, did the author actually think that through when they created this plot twist? Like, did they think about the implications that would ensue from, like, you're setting up these two characters to essentially be in a relationship? Did you think it through when you decided to make this plot twist?
Yeah, I think I've only seen the same creator that I was talking about earlier, which like I said the name will be somewhere on here. Was the one that brought it to my attention because I had thought about it, but it wasn't like a good spice scene in terms of like we're reading like Dark Olympus right now, which is like beautifully written. So this one was a lot quicker and I was just like, yeah, okay, they did the deed, cool. And then
It
kept
felt
it
a little
moving.
out of place.
Yeah, I kept it moving a little bit. Um I'm curious if we know that like or if we're thinking that Finn and Lore become closer. I'm wondering if they get a spice scene in the future, if it'll be better because there's more chemistry between them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think the banter and everything existed between Asher and
Lore.
Lore, but there's just a completely different type of connection between
Finn and Lore.
Finn and Lore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm interested to see whether that was intentional or not. Um I think another gripe that I saw was like Finn's feelings seem like they came out of nowhere. We never really know what he's thinking. And I'm like, I think he makes it pretty clear. I think he makes it pretty clear that he cares about Lore and that there's something more there. Because if there wasn't anything more there, he wouldn't have been like, oh, we can't, like, did you think it was going to stay the same once Asher was here? You know, like he has himself in a really like tough spot because he's like, I care for this person, but I'm also not trying to like be the other person.
Wonder if it's maybe less that like he cares and more that he's just genuinely a good person and he
Mm,
wants to help Lore.
mm,
And he's like is aware of what she's going through and what she's been through and just
mm-hmm,
wants to provide her with that sort of like safety to be able to continue on this journey of learning magic and discovering magic
mm-hmm.
and freeing her people.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm a romantic at heart. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping that there's some sort of like deep bond situation happening because I guess it's also like I read a lot of fae romance and stuff. And
Hmm.
so the lack of the idea of like mates and stuff is kind of interesting. I think my only gripe with the plot was Gray. I think Gray being pulled into the Queen's castle was a very quick arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
That part kind of threw me for a loop for a little bit because Lore kind of like gets in, gets Gray, and gets out.
Hmm.
Like she doesn't really struggle in the slightest, and there's like a chase scene and stuff like that, but it seemed way too easy.
Easy.
It just seemed like,
Was it easy on purpose or was
yeah,
it unintentional?
I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. I know it kind of just felt like a we need Gray in the situation. We need Gray here because we need Gray to be able to tell Lore what happens,
Hmm.
you know, and need to push the plot forward of like they need to go back to the castle and get the people and stuff like that. And that
Hmm.
might have, I was something about it was a little too quick for me.
It
Overall
was a little
though, I enjoyed the book. I kind of devoured it. I think I read it within like a day. It was really short, really
same.
quick little read. I'm heavily looking forward to the second one. And I'm thinking it's going to be a good series.
I'm curious to see how the second one pans out.
Yeah.
I will remain cautiously optimistic on the
I
second
think
one.
that's a good way to view it cuz I don't think it's going to end up in my I don't think Lore of the Wilds is going to end up in my like top 10 of the year,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
I'm reiterating, I just don't think the hate is coming from a genuine place, and a lot of it might just be like bandwagon
could
hatred.
be. Could be.
But
I gave
that
it 4 stars.
was, I don't remember what I gave it. I think I gave it 3 or 4.
I gave it 4 stars purely for the plot twist at the end.
That's fair. It added some points. It was an interesting twist. But that
But yeah,
was today's episode of Lore of the Wilds. Currently unsure when this one will go out. So I cannot give you any updates as to
what's coming
what's
next? I
coming
don't know.
next. We don't know.
More books
More
are coming
books,
next.
more chats, and we will see you in the next video. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Remember that you are loved, you are important, and we are here for you.